the Pledge of Allegiance, and Mr., what what did I say, September 13th? Oh, no, I'm looking at September's meeting. That's why. I'm looking at the agenda it's October 12th. I'm sorry. Call the meeting of October 12th to order. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and Mr. Foster White will lead us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we have a kind of a special guest presentation, I believe.
Good evening. I'd like to start this board meeting and all board meetings in the future with a special spotlight presentation of one or more of our students' excellent work in a number of different areas. Tonight, we have the great privilege of having one of our students, Plainville High School junior, Dale Naira, who is going to play a presentation of a song that I can let him tell you about it, but he composed a song for a performance over the summer, and we're going to play a video of that. So I know on your board agenda it says National Anthem. We decided to go in a different direction, and Dale wanted to showcase one of his pieces. So Dale, if you would you mind coming up?
Hi everyone. So this is a song that I wrote over the summer for a showcase that is about one of my friends, and I performed this as a showcase in New York. So this is a video of the song, and I hope you enjoy it.
so it's hard enough for me to stand here and talk on the microphone, never mind sing on a stage in front of a bunch of people. Dale also composed the piano music in the background because they didn't have a piano there, so he played that and it was recorded in advance, so he would sing over it. Very incredibly talented young man, and we're proud of him. And I just wanted to share that piece. It was very touching. I heard it over the weekend, and I just, obviously it's about a friend he had lost last year. So I just want to commend Dale for sharing that emotional piece, and extremely well done. Thanks again, Dale. I also want to thank Mr. and Mrs. Nair who are here tonight. I'm very proud of their son. And now Dale has to go to chamber choir rehearsal, so he made, you're only 7 minutes late, Dale. Thank you. At this time, the next special presentation, I'd like to pay tribute to one of our educators who we're very fortunate to have. And this, as you know, the Portrait Pioneer program, we started this last year as a way of capturing those staff role models who really exhibit the qualities that we're trying to build within our students through the Portrait of the Graduate. So being communicative, collaborative, mindful, innovative, and, oh wow, I just blanked for the first time. I always have those at the tip of my tongue. Resilient, thank you. I knew that. I will persevere. All right. So without further ado, this individual was Ryan McMahon, was nominated by Chelsea Tepp, and her words about Ryan were, Ryan has risen to the occasion to help build the RISE program and follow Vicky Trzynski and my vision and ran with it. He's mindful of the students' needs. He works innovatively to meet each student's need, creating class-wide projects, building rockets, egg drops that connect math and writing lessons. He's collaborative with his staff, communicative to not only parents, but staff within the building for each student's unique needs. He's really heavily focused on building a classroom with a community culture while teaching important SEL skills and fostering student educational growth. So I'd like to commend and congratulate Ryan on being nominated for this award by his peer. Ryan was at Tofflawn Elementary School, and there was a need for a really dynamic and talented special education teacher to move over to Linden to help run a program that needed a strong teacher and a strong influence on kids. And Ryan's done a tremendous job, so it's nice to see him acknowledged by his peer. Chelsea is a BCBA for the district. So congratulations to Ryan, and thank you to Chelsea for the nomination. Becky, do you want to join the picture?
The last special presentation that we have on our agenda is board member recognitions. And unfortunately, both of our board members who are leaving the board are not here this evening for different reasons. So we would just like to express our appreciation to, first of all, Nicole Palmieri, who has served on the board. And I will read our little award of appreciation from February 2017 to November of 2021. Hereby recognized as an indispensable, irreplaceable, invaluable member of our community. Your presence has enriched the lives of students in the Plainville school system and has served as an example for all. on behalf of the Plainville Board of Education. So we express our appreciation to first Nicole, and secondly, we express our appreciation to Kathy Wells, who is just completing her 4th year of service. She served 1 full term, and basically the same goes for Kathy. Again, people who step up to run for the office are greatly appreciated, and when they get elected, to lead with thoughtfulness is also greatly appreciated. So we'd like to recognize both of them. We will invite them to come in November if they would like, and we can celebrate a little bit more. All right, that brings us to the approval of minutes. We have a couple sets of minutes on our agenda. Someone like to make a motion?
Madam Chairman, I request that we approve the minutes of the September 13th, 2021 regular meeting of the Board of Education.
Second.
And also that
Sorry.
we request approval of the minutes of September, the special meeting of the Board of Education that was also held that evening.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Is there any corrections or issues? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. That leads us to citizens' comments. Anyone wishing to speak to the Board of Education, approach the podium and give us your name and your address, and we will give you 3 minutes. Anyone wishing to speak to the Board of Education? I have to say it 3 times. It's like a rule. Go ahead.
Ooh, that's kind of high. Can I lower the,
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
sorry, that was awful crunchy. My name is Cassandra Clark, and I'm at 39 Pierce Street in Plainville. So I'm here to say thank you very much for all the hard work that was put into doing the virtual open houses that were intended by parents. The open house that was held at the high school, I had to actually be in 3 places at once. So I attended the Linden open house for my daughter. So at the Linden open house, it was great that we got to see the teachers, and it was nice to have some one-on-one time. It felt a little bit more like a parent-teacher conference, but again, it was nice to see all the teachers. My question, though, was that because of COVID and all the restrictions that are necessary in order to keep everybody safe and to mitigate for infection, parents haven't been into the buildings for the past 18 months as they normally would be. For instance, if I had to pick up my child sick, or if open houses, we haven't been indoors. We haven't been down the halls to see the great bulletin boards and the art projects and the rooms, and to see the things that we normally would see that would make us feel, you know, like we're actually in our children's schools. With that said, it would be wonderful if perhaps teachers, and I know it would take time, if they could maybe perhaps take pictures of all 4 walls, just to say, this is our room. At the virtual open house, and God forget if I mispronounce, it's Miss Bajak. We saw her, we didn't see like the room, the classroom. So just to see the room. The other thing is like the hallways, you know, going in and out, like the bulletin boards, and what's it like now that things have changed. Maybe there's some artwork that's missing that we haven't seen. There's always some great stuff at Linden, like when you go down the hallway, like in front of the cafeteria and stuff. Not being able to see that stuff, it just makes it like a building they're going into. And like, again, I know that there's things that are there and it's for safety purposes until things change. But again, it would be nice. The other thing I was wondering is, from what I understand, the Board of Education members were able to see, tour buildings and stuff, but it was at the beginning of the school year, but not until, not after everything was put up. So it was like before all the things were up and the school rooms were decorated and all those things. So I just know that it would be nice if school board if school board members could look at the schools, and take a walk through again. And that way, if when parents get any kind of slideshows or pictures, if they have questions, the Board of Education members would be knowledgeable of such things. And I know there's safety concerns. We get emails from the principals so that like the high school stuff would just go to like the parents of the high school students. And like Linden, we've had emails where it's just gone to specific parents for, Linden Street School, so that it wouldn't be going out to the general public, the pictures, et cetera. So I just think it would just help with transparency and make parents feel a little bit more like they're part of the school community. So you guys can't ask questions, but that's it. Thank you again for all your hard work, and Dale's music was absolutely beautiful. So thank you again to him.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the Board of Education?
Good evening. Can you hear me okay? My name is Rachel Buchanan. I live at 134 Broad Street here in Plainville. The reason I'm speaking tonight is in regards to the subject of social and emotional learning. I relocated here back to my hometown of Plainville in 2013 for one specific reason, and it was regarding our daughter's education. We were in a larger town with a massive high school and 2 middle schools, and with an introverted child on the shyer nature, we decided to come home to the school system that we loved and was smaller and we thought would be a better fit. It was right around this time, her going into 5th grade, that I first heard the term social and emotional learning. Back then, we were very, very happy that the school focused on the individual child, had an emphasis on coping skills, connecting the dots between academia and life skills, and felt very much like an active participant in the relationship between teacher, student, and parent. It wasn't until middle school that we started to hear some new terms being introduced, but still nothing like in the last few years. It was around middle school when I started to notice some reading materials being sent home that were sensitive topics and a little extreme for 6th graders. So pay attention. Had I paid better attention at that time and asked more questions then, I think I would have been better prepared for what came down the road. About 3 years ago, I began researching critical race theory, and that led me down the rabbit hole of social and emotional learning. I understand that Plainville School Systems uses CASEL. I believe it's the collaborative, forgive me, I have it here, collaborative academic, social, and emotional learning tool. It's one of the SEL resources that Plainville uses. It's here that I've uncovered a lot of questions and concerns. The emphasis has focused from the individual child to more of a collective and a very clear and direct focus on social justice. As someone who was raised by the Black side of my family here in town, and as a member of the LGBTQ community myself, proudly the B, and never hid who I am, I'm very concerned that something that is being blatantly on CASEL being defined as something that we want to be systemically introduced and implemented into our school systems as a resource to undo something like systemic racism. How does one systemic implementation help or create equity amongst diverse groups? So I have more questions than answers at this time, and I just want to connect the dots publicly between critical race theory, which is not being taught in Connecticut, but social and emotional learning, not as how we learned it as a family initially. I don't think it was designed to do what it's doing currently. And I don't even know if people are connecting the dots between social and emotional learning, something that is 70% wonderful. My mom used to teach us, you don't know what's going on in somebody else's home. Be kind. I did not need a sign hanging on the school that was made after something that ended up dividing our community. When me as part of the LGBT community, we had one flag. It was a pride flag. I didn't need both of my races to be put on that flag as well. If we're going to put black and brown people, then we need yellow people. We need everyone in between to be fairly represented. My concern is something that was done in good has been taken too far, and per Castle, the resource that Plainville uses, says very directly that its clear intent is to make a systemic implementation of social and emotional learning in school. And if you follow the resources in Castle, it will put you out to a parental portal resource that is put up by the Today Show. And guess who it's funded by? Zuckerberg and his wife. I've spent the last 3 years educating myself on social and emotional learning because I think that there are many, many important factors. However, I'm here today to express my concern about an ideology being systemically and blatantly implemented into our schools and creating the guise of inclusion and diversity, yet this is only a one-sided ideology. So I hope that the school system looks and considers everybody's viewpoints, including someone who's standing in front of you, mixed race, and is part of these communities. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the Board of Education? Anyone else wishing to speak to the Board of Education? Anyone else wishing to speak to the Board of Education? All right. With that, we will close public comments. We do have council liaison. We know that Ms. Puglisi is across town with another meeting, but she did provide some notes. Oh, boy. It's a heavy one. There's a lot going on at the council. Town council notes for October 12th. American Rescue Plan discussion. Plainville will be receiving approximately $5.2 million under the rescue plan passed by Congress. Eligible uses of the funds include support of public health response to COVID-19, to address negative economic impacts from the pandemic, investments in water and sewer projects, broadband infrastructure, and replace the loss of revenue. Members of the planning group included Chairwoman Kathy Puglisi, Council Member Dave Underwood, Council Member Chris Wazorko, Town Manager and Assistant Town Manager, Finance Director, Technical Services Director, Roadway Superintendent, Water and Pollution Control Superintendent, Town Attorney, and the Regional Health Director. The White Oak Development Project update. At the September 13th Town Council meeting, it was recommended that the Connecticut Brownfield Land Bank be engaged to manage the remediation grant for the White Oak property. The land bank has been involved in brownfield remediation grants throughout Connecticut for many years, and they're familiar with the requirements of the grant and all that's involved working with developers to clean up the contaminated properties. The land bank has submitted a proposal for these services in the amount of $58,000. These costs would be paid through the remediation grant. Police chief update. Chief Eric Peterson will provide an update on the police department activities, including a status of the body camera policy and implementation. Honor Heights discussion. Earlier this year, Robert Lee was contacted by several residents of the Honor Heights neighborhood about the possibility of having sewers installed to their services to service their homes. This neighborhood consists of 82 homes that were built in the late 50s and 60s. A review of the health department records indicate that the average age of the septic system in this area is 35 years. And unless there are objections from the council, the town staff plan to send a follow-up email to those who attended the meeting to determine how much interest there may be and continuing discussions on a possible sewer extension to the Honor Heights neighborhood. The result of the feedback will be shared with the council at a future meeting. Affordable housing plan development. The state of Connecticut recently mandated that municipalities develop an affordable housing plan every 5 years. The initial plan must be submitted by next June. The town recently was awarded a $15,000 grant from the state to develop such a plan. Town staff issued an RFP to solicit proposals from qualified firms to complete a plan to meet state requirements. 5 proposals were received. After the interviews were completed, the panel unanimously is recommending awarding the contract to SLR of Cheshire to assist in developing an affordable housing plan for Plainville. Robertson Airport concrete work. The Aviation Commission recently authorized the use of aviation funds to make improvements to the administration offices at Robertson. Interstate Aviation is also contributing funds to this project as well. And the town staff is recommending that the council waive the bid process and allow the concrete work at Robertson Airport to Terry's Concrete out of Southington in the amount of $48,620. This is an item under new business that they are going to be recommending probably this evening. And I believe the last item is a COVID-19 update. As of last Thursday, October 7th, Plainville remains in the red category for COVID-19 cases with 15.5 rate per 100,000 population. This is just above the orange category level. It's anticipated that Plainville will most likely be in a lower category next week. All right, so we thank Ms. Puglisi for sending a report over from the town council. And that brings us to the superintendent's report. So, Mr. LePage, you get to use your voice now.
Thank you, Chairwoman Tyrell. That was terrible. I apologize. So, I'm just going to share a few updates, and then I have just some information from Assistant Superintendent Lewandowski and then High School Principal Carl Johnson as part of my report tonight as well. First, just some general updates, and you did hear some from Mrs. Puglisi regarding COVID updates. Cases remain at the red level in Plainville at 15.5 cases per 100,000 people. It's a ratio. That number has been dropping, although we have seen some localized kind of outbreaks from youth athletics teams that have caused quite a ripple effect across the district. We've had cases at every school. We're actually at 62 cases since the start of school year. All of last year, we had 158 cases, so it's been a challenge. You know, we're following close, we're tightly following the mitigation strategies in school. We've only had one case that is that's a probable, you know, school contagion based on, you know, sitting together at a lunch table and, you know, other close proximity. All the others have, you know, been traced back to situations outside of the school, but nonetheless, we work, you know, especially Julie Simard, who parents know that name, and our nurses and our principals who come in on the weekends and look at classroom setups and Power School and all the other ways we have of tracking, you know, the location of students as far as close contacts, and then making those calls and following the DPH guidelines that are laid out for us. It's quite a bit of work. It's challenging work. Each day of this 3-day weekend, we're involved in doing that process, so there's really no break from it. So if no one's looking forward to the end of COVID more than I am, and I know my team is as well, but we're doing everything that we possibly can to keep kids in school and learning and enjoying themselves while following the strategies. We continue to await guidance on a number of from the state on a number of topics. It's been a little slow coming on some things, such as the musical performances, guidelines related to theater, band, chorus, things of that nature. We're waiting for Addendum 7 to be specific. We've been waiting for quite some time, so I hope that comes out soon. But now we're planning based on the national guidelines as approved by our health director locally. So that's working out well for our musicians. Also, I'm working with our local health director, who's an interim health director. Our last health director, Shane Lockwood, did relocate, took another job in Florida. So I'm working with Sue Jacosi, who's been excellent, actually, and we're working on putting together a clinic for staff. I did send out a survey. We had 235 of our staff members who have the Pfizer vaccine, would like the booster, so we're looking at planning a clinic in district. I had a meeting this morning with Hartford Healthcare and our health director and a couple of members of our team to look at the logistics of that. So our tentative date for that's November 4th, and I'm working out a timeline, probably 12 to 5 is what we talked about today. So more information will go out to staff very shortly. We're also looking at hosting a flu vaccine clinic, as we've done in most years in the past. We're trying to get those to go to the schools individually, or at least to a few of the schools, to make it easier if individuals would like the flu vaccination. And then finally, COVID vaccines for ages 5 to 11. The Pfizer vaccine is expected to be, it's going for approval on October 26th, and then Moderna and Johnson & Johnson are close behind those, so that will become another option for families wishing to get the vaccination for their children. So that's kind of an overall COVID update. There's hundreds of other details, but that's enough for tonight, and I'm always available for more questions if you call my office. Evening athletic event, spectator policy changes, generally very positively received and supported by parents and community members. I know the athletic director, Chris Farrell, spent a lot of time working on this with, and also the CCC and CIEC athletic directors and superintendents supporting them have instituted similar athletics policies and procedures due to a number of issues. We've had fewer issues than some districts, but some districts have had pretty dramatic issues. You know, actually the night that it was covered here, the news called me and did an interview. I know there was a stabbing in a town nearby. You know, there's a lot of vandalism and graffiti that have been happening. Vaping in dark spaces out in the fields, things of that nature that are really difficult to monitor. You know, everyone's there to watch the game, but unfortunately when minors are dropped off and left to their own devices with large groups of peers, you know, there were a number of issues that were happening and starting to increase, so being proactive. Athletic Director Farrell did a nice job of modeling his policy after similar what districts had done similarly in West Hartford, Bristol, and many surrounding districts. So for the two evening events, at the time I wrote this report, you know, over the weekend, the two evening events that have happened since this policy was I guess, enforced or implemented, have been very good, problem-free. Still lots of kids coming out, watching the games, and having a good time, but more parent supervision and support, which we really appreciate, because we don't want to take the risks of safety to our students or property. And again, I've spoken to a few parents about this who were unhappy, but the majority have been happy, and think it makes sense. Let's see. Homecoming festivities are going to be Friday, October 22nd, with a 6:30 p.m. kickoff for the game. There's a homecoming carnival. I'm not sure yet as to whether I will be in the dunk tank or not. I was last year. It's going to be pretty chilly, and I don't know if it was this late last year, Mr. Johnson. Last year they heated the water up for me, which was nice, but I'm not sure they will this year. So if you want to seek your revenge on the superintendent, I may be there to get dunked. But it's going to be October 22nd. There's a carnival in the grass area behind the football field with lots of carnival games and food items and activities that will be set up. And, you know, promotion, information about the homecoming dance has gone out by Mr. Johnson as well for Saturday. It's going to be outside from 6 to 9. It's been a large tent that's been secured, and there's lots of details around that have been communicated to the families of the high school students. So we're looking for it. That was planned. Mr. Johnson and I and his team planned it with the local health director to make sure we're following the guidelines, but allowing students to have a good time, and in addition to the dancing, outdoor yard games, and cornhole, and all kinds of other activities for them to do. So just to make it a fun and memorable night for the kids involved. Just quickly on the middle school renovation planning process, because that's a very big deal for the district. The middle school, believe it or not, is coming up on 30 years old since it was built. I took a tour with the Capital Projects Building Committee, and there's a significant amount of wear and tear and things that need to be replaced, repaired, and damaged. The presentation is happening tonight, just as I was leaving my office. It happens to be the same night with the Capital, with the Town Council, and they're looking at formally approving a group called CSG, Construction Services Group, who would be a project managers group to help get us through the referendum process, including all of basically the timeline for that would be ed specs and initial condition assessment to begin as soon as possible, as soon as they're formally approved by the Town Council, and to be completed by mid-December. A conceptual design and preliminary cost estimate to be completed during December and January. A renovation status submission and town approvals would happen in February and March, and then April would involve public outreach and the Town Council vote. And then May is a blackout period that's required, and then the referendum vote would take place in June with required grant application to the state that's required by June 30th, 2022 in order to secure the funds to start that process. So CSG has had success. They just got the Farmington High School through referendum. It had failed with another company when they tried to get through the referendum the first time. So we're, if they're approved tonight, which I'm hoping they will be, we're optimistic that they'll be the right answer for helping us get to the next process with the middle school renovation that is definitely needed. And I know it looks nice from the outside and even from the inside in many locations, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Kevin if you would, oh, it's already up. Kevin's one step ahead of me. So regarding the good news regarding another renovation project, the Wheeler renovation that was wrapped up. But as many families know, we had a pretty big task on our hands. At the time of the renovation was completed, while it was being completed, we had to promise that in order to get the renovation reimbursement in full, we had to bring our student population up to at least 352 students. That sounds easier than it is. We made a lot of adjustments. We moved preschool classes from the Linden district. Some districts don't have preschool at all, but some have them all located at one school. So we made the shift from moving Linden classrooms over to Wheeler, and also we had other students moving into town. We gave some options for siblings to attend Wheeler if they had a preschool child there as well. And all in all, as of the October 1st deadline, we reached 355 students. So as you can see on the slide here at the bottom in blue, that means an amount of $3 million. Let me get back to that slide. $3,053,098 that was at stake with the reimbursement amount. If we did not meet that threshold, it's a pretty significant penalty. So, last year we had a plan to make it, and then COVID got in the way of that plan being successful, and we asked for an extension of a year, which we asked for forgiveness of that requirement, but they didn't allow that. So they extended it by a year, so we had to implement the plan this year. Still coming back during COVID times, but I'm just proud of our team working really hard to make that happen. And if you go to the school, it's not overcrowded. It's a really good place to learn, and the kids are doing well. So, and the preschoolers love it there. Next, I'm going to shift gears from that good news of Wheeler to just an update on. You've heard a lot about the ESSER grant funds. There was the Coronavirus Relief Fund initially, ESSER grant, ESSER Part 1, ESSER Part 2, American Rescue Plan Act, ESSER Part 3. You can see on this kind of busy chart of all the grant funds that have come in or are pending approval. A lot of work was done and is required of each of these grants to submit the grants, first of all, in order to be considered for the amount that you're entitled to if you complete the process appropriately. My Director of Business and Operations, Sam Adlerstein, has done a ton of work on this, along with our team, our entire administrative team, really planning in a thoughtful way, gaining insight from families through surveys over the summer and then through forums that we had over the summer. We're going to continue that work. I just wanted to share, so this is just kind of an overview of 8 different, buckets of money, if you will, or funding that have been approved or have already been spent to get our schools open during COVID times. That was the CRF funds. So lots of planning went into the effective use of those funds so far, and that planning has to continue. So on the next slide, you'll see 67 different projects. And you're not going to be able to read all this. We'll spend more time looking at this as a community, but some of these have already been completed. Some of these are in the works. Some of these are on the back burner as a placeholder, as something that we would be nice to do. But we're prioritizing all of these projects very carefully, making sure that we're getting the most for the funds that we have available, using insight from the town and the community. So it's important to, with an influx of funding coupled with, when I was looking at the strategic planning process, and I've talked about the 5-year strategic plan kind of ending at the end of this year, and normally we would start looking at a 5-year strategic planning process. This is a very strange time because we have millions and millions of dollars in grant funding. We're trying not to set ourselves up for a budget cliff by putting all this money in and supplanting our budget, and then in 4 years having to ask for a 12% or 15% increase because we've set up our systems in such a way that set us up for a budget cliff. So it's a really delicate time where we have to be careful on how we're spending these funds. So there's a lot of planning that's involved, a lot of project planning. We have a turnover, as you likely know, with our town manager who announced his retirement in early January 5th, I believe it is. We will have some turnover, as you know, on the Board of Education. So normally starting strategic planning in the fall makes sense, but at this time, and I've spoken with the board chair and just, with our team about the idea of holding off on strategic planning as we normally do it in the fall, because it's just such a tumultuous time with so many different factors going on, and we have so many plans already in the works aligned with our current vision that, we looked at the idea of a different process where we look at a really meaningful way of moving our district forward, doing what we're doing and doing it well, getting more community buy-in, insight, and collaboration on this, probably closer to a January timeline start, is what we're looking at this time. Sam, I know that, we spent a lot of time on this, so if you'd like to share anything further on that. This next slide, and please feel free to cue up your thoughts. This next slide just shows you all the positions that have been paid for or will be paid for out of grant funding. So you can see that, although we're doing a lot to purchase, like the musical instruments for the students who need the musical instruments, and the remake of the Library Media Center here at the high school to make it more conducive as a community space, which is in the planning phases. Lots of other plant and operation, ideas. We do need staff to support the needs of our students who have had some learning gaps, less in Plainville than in many communities. But you can see many of these positions, the 5 that are highlighted at the top, were planned in our budget last year, the 2021-22 budget, and they were taken out of the budget and paid for out of the grants as an offset to as we did supplant some of those funds from the grant last year, and this was a decision by the board. So you can see that there are a number of staff members who are being funded through the grants, and we'll plan accordingly as we move forward so that we don't set ourselves up for a budget cliff. So it's meant to be a temporary short-term solution to helping accelerate learning with our students and provide those SEL and emotional supports. They're going to build on our students' ability to be resilient and persevere. Sam, did you have anything else that I missed in that? All right, well, I just want the community to know that we will be doing planning for the future of Plainville Community Schools, and their voice is going to be really important in that process. It's just we're putting a little bit of a pause on the strategic planning now just because there's so many moving parts, and I want to make sure we're inclusive of everyone that should be involved in that process. So, and I hope that makes sense to everybody. And then the last slide is just, it just summarizes that. We're looking for that, using our existing vision, values, and goals, our portrait of the graduate that we spent a lot of time developing and working and celebrating, and then some invitation to explore new possibilities, community ownership and involvement, the Board of Education heavily involved, the Plainville community heavily involved, and just really working on that sense of community that is so strong in Plainville as we plan for the future. And with that, I will stop talking, and I will introduce Mr. Lewandowski, if you wouldn't mind. Last year, and I'll let Mr. Lewandowski explain, but as part of Mr. Lewandowski runs our PDEC committee, so I'm going to let him explain the process of teacher evaluation and where we are at this point.
All right.
Dave?
Thank you, Superintendent LePage. So as Steve kind of alluded to, the last couple of years obviously have been different in education and in teaching and learning. So the state Department of Education had given some flexibility to what we can do for evaluations, teacher evaluations and administrator evaluations. So last year, we had, through the PDEC committee, had talked about the flexibilities that were given by the state last year, and we adopted those, which were really no ratings. It was more conversations, summative evaluations, and really those deep conversations with staff about their teaching practices and some of the major goals that the state had kind of wanted districts to adopt. This year, it's a little different. We do have flexibilities that were handed down, but they're a little more intensive. And there really wasn't much difference between what our plan that was adopted by the state and approved by the state. They were very similar. So we're having ratings like we normally do in a normal school year. Those ratings will be provided to the state, so every district will have to give their ratings of teachers and of administrators to the state at the end of the year. But there were some flexibilities and some differences. More informal observations, more frequent informal observations of shorter duration with feedback. So that's positive, and teachers really like that. But they also wanted some choice. So this year, we adopted the flexibilities of some of those informal, more frequent observations with feedback. But we also allowed for what was approved in our own plan from the state, which was some more peer collaboration and communication. So teachers learning from other teachers. They really wanted to get back to that. We want them to get back to that. It's very powerful when teachers are learning from each other. So that's something we added into our plan that we sent into the state, was to follow their observation kind of schedule, but also allow teachers to substitute some of those requirements for peer observations and really talking about instruction with other teachers and learning from each other. Some of the areas of focus that the state really wanted us to, all districts to focus on in the flexibilities, were things we were already doing as a district. So the overall well-being of students and staff, equitable learning opportunities, culturally responsive teaching and learning, academic achievement, and family engagement, with family engagement being a really big part of it. So those are areas we were already kind of focusing on anyway, but those are the areas of focus the state really wanted us, teachers and administrators, to set their yearly goals on. So that kind of stayed the same as last year as well.
So the board will see this as an item under new business for approval. It does require the formal approval of a Board of Education. Mr. Lewandowski runs the PDEC committee, which involves union leadership and members of administration. So it's a collaborative support from that group as well as the Board of Education in order to get approval. We had to submit the application to the state, but it's pending approval of the board tonight. So thank you. Sorry. Next, my pleasure to introduce our high school principal, Mr. Carl Johnson, who's going to share a really interesting and creative use of instructional learning time that's being proposed. There's still more development that needs to happen, but there's been a lot that's already been done, really to provide students with learning adventure days. I'll let Mr. Johnson explain what that is.
Yeah, so thank you for letting me speak tonight, and really just to update the board quickly about something that we're hoping to pilot, and then we'll be speaking to the board about more so after we get feedback on this and start to understand what it could look like in further detail. So right now, the working title for this is we're referring to them as Learning Adventure Days. You'll see other schools refer to them as Passion Days. There's other terminology that people use. And Kevin, if you don't mind. So partially where this came from is due to everything that's happened over the past year and a half. We had to take a look at exams and midterms and finals. And so we've taken a hard look at those. And also what we're looking at is traditionally what we've used as 9 days for exams at the high school is looking at is there ways we could use that time in different ways that could potentially be more beneficial for students. So one of the ideas that we're working with is this idea of learning adventure days. And really where this comes from is the idea that we want to make sure that students are exposed to a wide variety of learning opportunities while they're in high school. And even things beyond traditionally what we do in the curriculum or what we do in the classroom. Things that we hear constantly about when students leave high school that they wish they had learned about or they wish they knew about before they go off, to post-secondary lives. It's incredibly tied to our work on student voice and choice. That has been something we've been working on at the high school quite a bit over the past few years. It is directly tied to one of our goals during NEASC. And really what we're doing with that is trying to give students greater voice over things they want to learn about in high school, and also giving them choice during the year about things that they feel are important to them. What's also nice is that we want to directly connect this to the Portrait of the Graduate. And one of the key things that we're building in place is that during these learning adventure days, any of the sessions will have to be directly connected to a Portrait of the Graduate skill. And it's going to become another way for us to examine how students are growing in those skills and give them a chance to reflect on their own growth in terms of those. We also are connecting it, I'm sure the board remembers I presented on the graduation requirements for 2023, and one of the key components of that is a mastery-based graduation requirement. And one of the things we'd like to do is integrate these learning adventure days eventually into that mastery-based graduation requirement, which is going to be tied to our Portrait of the Graduate, so that students not only have opportunities in their classrooms and in the normal curriculum, but then also other opportunities to show mastery or growth towards those skills. One of the major things we've been working on and a lot of talk has been put around is making reflection a huge part of these learning adventure days, so giving students an opportunity to reflect on their learning during these days and what has happened, because that's really going to be kind of a key part, especially when we talk about the connection to the mastery-based graduation requirement and also the Portrait of Graduate skills. We also see a direct alignment to what we're doing with social emotional learning. The key piece being is the building of relationships between students and staff. One of the things you'll see is that it allows students and staff who potentially don't have classes together to connect with each other. And also really important for us is the fact that it's building in time in the school year to break just the grind of high school. And so the day in, day out, one class after another of high school, it gives a chance to do something different and something exciting. So if you flip to the next slide, Kevin, you'll see these are some of the ideas that have been thrown around that we're working on. So basic car maintenance, gardening. I'm sure many of you have heard about the greenhouse projects that's happening, so we've incorporated that. We have staff members who are certified in first aid CPR and are ready to train students. There's teachers who want to teach students about fly fishing, about yoga, dance class. We've even had some ideas about driver license, not necessarily a driver's license class, but just understanding how to maintain your driver's license, how to get a driver's license, building that in. Kevin, if you wouldn't mind. So we've also thought about bringing in the outdoors, so going hiking. There's been some combinations with art classes with that. So incorporating art or literature into hiking, meditation, literary discussions, doing some community service projects, getting out. The senior center is very close to our high school. So there's been talk about doing that, where it's, there's kind of a twofold reason, that we're doing that. There's also talk about doing community service projects with our construction classes. Kevin, if you wouldn't mind. We also have self-defense basics. SRO Martins is trained in that and has taught students in the past going off to college. We have people who play music instruments who never get a chance to show that off. You'll see in a minute, archery was actually one of the things that students responded that they were really interested in and wanted to have an opportunity to do. stock market, college planning. We actually have a high school teacher who is a black belt in Taekwondo, which I'm going to save who that is because that's a great trivia question. And even some other ideas that we've thrown around. So one of the things we did was we did a student interest survey. Kevin, if you wouldn't mind. We actually got a very high response rate to the survey. We did an extended homeroom. We had 456 total students who completed it. 70% of our students completed it. One of the things we were happy to see is that it was pretty evenly split between the grades. So we feel like we got some very good feedback from students. So if you flip to the next slide, these were the top 10 activities, and these were ideas that were put out there, and these were the top 10 that came back, and that just shows the number of students who responded that was something they'd be interested in learning about in a brief activity. So you can see archery was incredibly popular, which used to be a staple of physical education classes. Students are very interested in learning about first aid, CPR. A guided bike ride is something that came up as something that students really wanted to do. So you can see there's a whole bunch of different opportunities there that really students were very interested in. What we're planning to do, if you flip to the next slide, Kevin, is on November 5th, we'd like to do a pilot run of this. And so what we're planning is that on November 5th, we're going to run a 12-10 schedule, except we're not going to dismiss students. And we're going to hold them here, but what we're going to do is a special 2-hour block at the end of the day from 12:10 to 2:10, and we're going to offer students a host of opportunities of things that they can sign up for to pilot this in a small way. And what we like about that is just taking a chance, taking an opportunity to do it in 2 hours. We're not setting aside a whole day. We want to kind of test our systems, make sure that we can get students assigned to different opportunities and different things that they're interested in, but we really wanted to work this out. One of the, I think, really interesting, and Kevin, if you wouldn't mind flipping, you're going to have to kind of click slowly on this one. We also had a chance for students to respond, and I know they're small up there, but students gave us a lot of feedback, and the feedback from students has been overwhelmingly positive. I did forums with students at the end of last year where we invited students and they came and we talked a little bit about this as a group. Those were, during school. And students really gave positive feedback. And a lot of students said that, especially the upperclassmen, have said they wish this was something that had been in place when they were freshmen, that this is an opportunity they wish they had been able to take part in. And so you can see kind of different statements up there. Hopefully you can read them a little bit. All right, so that was really the presentation we had. We just wanted to give a brief update about that. And then going off of that pilot, we plan to go to the curriculum subcommittee and have a deeper discussion about these days moving forward. So if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. So traditional midterms and exams, but it's not completely replacing them. What we're looking at is we looked at classes and we've asked every teacher and every department has gone through and basically identified, do they truly need to give an exam? Exams were one of those things that became a tradition, and we set aside 9 entire school days to give exams. What we've gotten the feedback from is about half of our courses have said that they take care of that in different ways. So whether that's a final project or it just doesn't make sense for their courses. And we use the example, like when I was when I majored in history at UConn, I never took an exam, like a 2-hour exam. We wrote a paper and we turned it in. And so they're not always authentic for what students are doing afterwards. And so we're really having deep discussions about which ones are we just doing out of tradition and because this is something we've always done, and which ones actually have real meaning, to learning, that we really need to give this exam. And so the hope is that, we will still have some kind of iteration of exams, but we're going to be able to get some time back from these and not have to set aside 9 full days.
What do you anticipate, well, it's me.
That's me, sorry.
Oh, what do you anticipate will happen in the pilot day? Like, are you going to have students pretty much express what their interests are and that kind of thing, or?
Yeah, so we did the interest survey, and now what we have is teachers who are volunteering and signing up, saying that that's something that they would feel comfortable, teaching students about in a very small way. We're also looking at other opportunities on that day, so we, with that 2-hour block of time, we can do some college planning things, we can do some career things. What we want to do is, the biggest thing with this, and like I said, student choice and voice, is we want to avoid forcing a student into a session that they don't want to be in. Because we just feel, that's counterintuitive to what we're trying to do. We want students to have a choice in this where they feel like this is something they want to know about. And one of the things a big discussion point around this is the idea of a low-risk opportunity. So you might not be willing to sign up for a half semester of photography because you're not really sure if you like photography, but to do a 2-hour, little session on photography, that's not very high risk to your schedule at high school. And so the idea being is that students can try things out. They can try out something that they might not be, a construction class that maybe they would never think to sign up for, but they're willing to try out for 2 hours.
Carl, what is the process for those students who haven't expressed any desire to participate at all?
Yeah, so that's, what we're seeing is that the vast majority of students are expressing an interest in things. What we'll do is then work with those students who are just showing, they just don't have anything that they're interested in. And we've talked about different things we can do with them during that time, or different things we can offer them. But really working with them to find out what are they interested in, and what do they want to learn about. And the hope is to offer such a wide variety of things that the vast majority of students have something that they feel connected to. One of our hopes is if this idea grows and we find it to be beneficial, is that all of a sudden it starts to get very much into our career and college planning, our pathways. We have incredible resources around us, not only in this town, but in the state, that students can access very quickly. And so if we have a day set aside, one of the things we always, we have many students who come in every year and they talk about wanting to be in sports management. And so we've talked about, well, it would be very easy in some ways to put together a day where students could go out to the yard goats, they could go to UConn, they could go to ESPN, and they could find out what sports management really is. And so that becomes, a learning adventure. That becomes something that you can't do during the traditional school day.
Thank you, this is exciting.
Agreed.
I believe if the board members wanted to come in on November 5th, I was speaking with Ms. DiLorenzo earlier, and I know she had said to extend the invitation, so
Yeah, absolutely.
if you want to see the trial run, no pressure.
No.
That'd be fun. That'd be great. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
You can count on me.
All right. Does that conclude your report?
That concludes my report. Thank you.
Any questions on anything we discussed? Good. All right. That brings us to board subcommittee reports, and we do not have our student representative, Garrett. Facilities, I do not believe we've had a facilities or finance meeting, right?
Garrett is here, but
He's
he's at Chambers, so Mr. Johnson's going to go
Go
grab him.
get him.
So
Oh, good,
we can always
okay.
have him go after,
Yeah,
maybe?
sure.
Okay.
He's double dipping, huh? Facilities and finance, we have not had a meeting.
There was no meeting.
Okay.
Hope there is one.
And policy, Crystal?
No, I believe we have a meeting scheduled for October 18th, I think.
All right.
Yeah, we may have to double up because I have a lot of policies coming, so I may do another meeting.
Uh-oh.
Yes.
Curriculum is not set yet, but as Mr. Johnson alluded to, that's something that this Learning Adventure Days would be the discussion. No outreach, and let's see, PAC liaison from the high school, Mr. White?
Yes. The PAC met on September 15th. At that time, they had a treasury balance of $4,374.65, but out of that, some of the scholarships that they had awarded last year, those checks had not yet been cashed, which I find unusual, but not too strange. Their next meeting is going to be on November 17th. And those meetings, the PAC meeting and the one in November, all things being considered equal, they will both be in-person meetings.
Thank you. Tafon Elementary PTO, Ms. Martinez.
No report for October because they are meeting this Wednesday.
Uh-huh. And I believe the Linden report was passed on from Mrs. Wells to Mrs. St. Lawrence.
So I do have that. Their Scholastic Book Fair was a huge success as their first back-in-school opportunity with the students in the last year and a half. The students were very excited to see the books and shop, and parents were gracious and understanding. So a great start off to the year. Let's see. On October 29th, the PTO will be hosting a trunk or treat event at the school in the evening. Parents and teachers will be welcome to decorate cars and hand out goodies while kids trick or treat with masks on. Due to not being able to host indoors, they found a way to move it outside to make sure the kids can have something fun and spooky to do. And I think that's all I have. All right. So the MSP PTC met on Tuesday, September 14th. They're looking forward to a great year with many new activities with a lot of new people on their board. They understand that people don't like fundraisers, and many people don't like fundraisers, but they need to, they need funds to make things happen. So they have several fundraisers they'll be doing throughout the year, and they ask that, people choose the one that works best for them. And if you prefer, they're going to be doing you can make a minimum $10 donation for the school year. You can either send that to the school in an envelope marked MSP PTC, or they have a Venmo account, which is at MSP-PTC. They had a Spiritwear fall fundraiser that's going on now until October 8th. And they're hoping to do some fun things like an adult-only cornhole tournament, holiday gift cards, and a lot more. And they're in the process of doing bingo. And they also have a paint night scheduled for Wednesday, October 27th with the MSP art teacher, Miss Meehan. Numbers are limited due to social distancing, but it's from 6 to 8 and $20 a painter. Each student must attend with a parent. So if you're interested in that, check your emails or ask your children. They should have more details about that. And they're actually meeting tonight, so that's it.
So we're going to bounce back to our student representative report. Garrett, I think this is the first time we've been in, you've been serving as our liaison for a while, but we have not really physically seen you, I don't think, till now.
Yeah.
So welcome.
Thank you. So for a student perspective, PHS is slowly coming back to normal after many months of COVID interference, as we know. We are seeing the return of many school events that were difficult to arrange last year, such as a proper homecoming, class competition, certain sporting events, and musical performances. On another note, PHS will be using various forum days on some Wednesdays to demonstrate ALICE safety protocol, social emotional learning, devil's advocate sessions for freshmen, and demonstration of portrait of a graduate. Students are anticipating a pilot of learning adventure days, which is a way for students to build knowledge on their own interests with different activities for students to experience during the day. And the student voice is the driving force behind this Learning for Adventure Days, with each student getting to select what topics they would like to learn more about in an interactive program that will be new to PHS. An overview of events at PHS. Looking back, we had a forum on Wednesday, September 8th on ALICE training, which was followed by a September 29th forum on social emotional learning. And on Thursday, we have another social emotional lesson in our English department classes. Each student on the September 29th forum learned about and reenacted various situations and looked at how emotions impact interactions. Looking back, the senior breakfast was on September 10th, where Mr. LePage spoke to the class of 2022. And then the PHS open house was on Wednesday, September 26th, which was our first half day. Currently, senior interviews are being conducted with school counselors to discuss common applications and college plans. And also the construction of the PHS greenhouse is underway under the supervision of Mr. Sawinski. Looking ahead, we have 9th and 11th grade PSATs tomorrow, Wednesday, October 13th. The homecoming game and carnival is on Friday, October 22nd, and the homecoming dance, which will be outside behind the PHS football field, will be Saturday, October 23rd. And then PHS parent-teacher conferences will be on Wednesday, October 27th. And that concludes the overview of events at PHS.
Thank you very much. That was a lot of information. We appreciate it. And we appreciate having to pull you out of your after-school activities here. So thank you so much. So that brings us all the way down to the Wheeler Elementary School report. Ms. Palmieri is our normal liaison there, but I don't think no one got a phoned-in report, right? That we're aware of? Okay. Correct council, I don't have a report this month. I did not attend the October meeting. And from a chairperson's report, I'm just going to mention that we do have the CABE annual conference on, it's been shortened, it's just November 12th, which is a Friday, instead of the full Friday and Saturday. But I believe several of us are slated to attend, right? All right. I think that's it. So that takes us to unfinished business, of which I do not think we have any. New business, board open forum. Anyone from the board have something they would like to?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I have a couple of things. One, I just want to really appreciate the work that Dale Nyra did this evening at the start of this meeting. I had the pleasure of knowing this young man earlier on in his life when he was associated with the PCSU Theater. And he was a very challenging and just an interesting young man to work with. And it is so good to see how far he has grown, especially with the work he did and received at the middle school and also here in the programs here. And it was just really heartening to see that, and he really did an excellent job tonight. And the other is kind of in a way of a commercial, because as part of the PAC's fundraiser, every year the PAC has done a fundraiser for pies and Otis Spunkmeyer. I always love that name, Otis Spunkmeyer. But the cookies, so I do happen to have the order sheet with me. In the past, some of the board has generously supported that. So we have to have our orders in by the 18th. So tonight would be a night to make a decision, and we'll work it the same way in the past if anyone's interested. So sorry for the commercial, but it's a very worthwhile cause because those funds do go to scholarship awards awarded by the PAC.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Okay. We do have, it's October, so Mr. Adlerstein is going to take us through the quarterly special education cost report.
Thank you. We look at the line item for special education tuition 4 times a year. The board pays close attention to that because it can be volatile, and it's also a very large line item in our budget, and so it could swing our budget one way or another. So this is the first time during the year that we look at it in October. It's an appropriate time to take a look because at this point we have a rough estimate of the tuition costs for the students that are outplaced and that are in the facilities where they will likely be for the year. I can talk to the cost part of it. Christina Kiley's here if you have any questions about the education side. When we roll it up right now, it's $305,788 unfavorable to budget. So if the students are in place for the full year and we rolled out the year, we'd be $305,000 unfavorable to budget, which is a little disappointing. When Vicki and I talked about it over the summer, we thought we were going to look pretty good this year. But as you know, people have been on the board for a long time. Things change fast, and so right now that's our estimate. Just looking forward, we report to the state for the first time in November for December 1 reporting. So that's the next time we really do a good roll-up forward from that, in February is the first time we find out what our excess cost reimbursement will be, or is likely to be. We can estimate from the state, and that swings based on a number of factors. So there's more information to come. Right now, this is about as much as we can tell you. We'll have to, it's good to be having this discussion early in the year because we'll plan accordingly, and our overall budget will come out in the black. Questions?
Nope, unless you got a magic wand.
Yeah. The one question, Sam, is do we have a higher number, I'm assuming we have a higher number than expected students that are on tuition outside the district?
Higher number than what we've seen in the past. We base it on, current conditions, but we know they change fast. So a lot of times we're just going by what we expect from prior year experience. We'll have to take a look at that at budget time, coming up, and do we stick with what we've historically budgeted for, or do we, would we want to maybe increase that budget? I don't know if Christina has anything to add to that.
And just like similar to last year, looking at our programs that we have here and continuing.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sure.
It's just if you don't, we can hear you, but other people.
Is that better?
That's it.
Okay, so similar to last year, we continue to look at the programs that we have here in the schools and seeing what resources we have and encouraging families and to be able to have the students come back with us. We also, this year, for some of our students that are out, we're including team members from our faculty that will be attending PPTs just to keep that partnership. And the students are saying, at some point, will I be able to come back there too once that skill development in that clinical way is developed. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you, Sam. We do not have a turf committee report this month. So our item D is the request for approval of the flexibilities of the implementing the guidelines for educator evaluation that Dave talked to before. If for some reason we wanted to table it, we could. Is that, from what I understand, it's not an urgent? Is that true? I just say this because I know there's a lot there, and I didn't know if anybody needed more time to look at it. I just wanted to put it out there.
It's, we had to submit it by October 1st, so we
So we do
apply
wanna-
for it by then,
okay.
but you could always, you could decide you didn't want to do it, but it's what the,
To be parliamentary correct, I would like to move that we do approve the flexibilities for implementing the Connecticut guidelines for educator evaluation 2017 for the 2021-22 school year.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. So from a perspective of conversation, thank you, Foster. Yeah, I mean, I didn't, I wasn't sure we had to do it just because I know there's quite a bit there, but I feel pretty comfortable with the presentation and what we've received, so. Anybody have any objections? We'll just move forward with it. All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Item carries. Thank you. That brings us to the consent agenda. And the only thing I would mention, I don't think we need to remove anything unless anybody else wants to, but I would mention that the consent agenda does hold the graduation date of Friday, June 10th on there. So just so, anybody interested in that little tidbit might be just, wanting to write that one down.
also a couple of years ago, boards of education were able to approve a graduation date as long as 180 school days had passed at that point, and extend the school year for the seniors only if there are subsequent snow days. Just a detail on that, snow days, as we experienced last year, are no longer allowed by the state because we have to have a minimum of 180 school days in-person learning, so there won't be any remote snow days. The only time that's an option is if you have more than 180 school days in your school year. Some districts have 182, 183. The number above 180, you could have remote days, but you have to have 180 school days, and that's how many we have. So, just a little information on that. So this is Friday, June 10th. It's the proposed graduation date. Thank you.
Gotcha.
So if there is a lot of snow, there could be some of the other schools actually being in attendance after graduation.
That's correct. If we had, say, 5 snow days, we'd have the rest of the school, kids in school for a week after the graduation. By Steve.
That's cruel, almost, but. All right, can I get a motion for the consent agenda?
I move we accept the consent agenda as presented, Madam Chairman.
Okay. Is there a second? Thank you, Rebecca. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and our most favorite motion? Yes.
Second.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you, Becky. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Thank you for watching.